Officially, Boodles did not admit women. And for living women, that was certainly true. Even among unliving women, Boodles was discriminating. But the stature of the ladies of Clan Ventrue was such in London that not even policies that dated back to the Regency could bar them entrance. Therefore, it was the Euphemia Langton, fee to her friends, whose son had been the first Baron Darcy de Darcy before he got his head chopped off over some bit of religious nonsense, reclining on a fainting couch in one of Boodles' private meeting rooms. Few of the Mortal Club members knew it, but there were actually several private entrances and secret passages in the Venerable Gentleman's Club. Entrances installed just to facilitate the admittance of Ventrue ladies of good standing, who needed discreet places to meet with their peers, their ghoul servants, or simply people of importance who needed adjustment. The Baroness, for the Ventrue of London had granted her in death the peerage her son had squandered in life, knew all the secret ways in and out of Boodles. She did own the place, after all. Across from the Baroness sat the object of her current attentions, Colonel Arthur Basingstoke, a Ventrue of some importance who was 300 years and 2 generations her junior. These deficiencies were outweighed by the ancillar's utility, for he was a student of history and politics, and was generally someone who knew things. Information was his stock in trade, and it was so valuable to Clan Ventrue that they overlooked his more unsavory associations. After all, someone had to work with Nosferatu on a regular basis, or who knew what mischief they'd get into. To Fee's right was the young lick she'd introduced to Arthur as Ethan Marshall, her youngest child. He looked to be in his late 20s, as he sat quietly, trying not to show his insecurity. Basingstoke knew the fledgling had not been introduced to the court, and indeed had not been introduced to any of the city's Ventrue. Accordingly, he assumed that Fee had picked him to test the whelp and see if he could sit in front of his peers without picking his nose or anything. It was daring if the boy had been anything less than a quarter-century dead, but he supposed that the Baroness wanted to accelerate her newest child's training. Thus far, Ethan had been tolerable. He'd made small talk competently, and hadn't looked overtly bored at any point. He'd even made an insightful comment about Brujah involvement in several recent political protests. "Arthur, darling," she said, languidly, "I would love to continue our conversation shortly, but I have some minor business to address with one of the club members before it grows too late." She hesitated and then smiled in a reasonable simulation of warmth. "While I'm gone, might I impose upon you to share the benefits of your wisdom with young Ethan here? I've instructed him mainly on practical concerns, but I confess I have neglected his education on clan history and politics. Perhaps you might fill in some of the gaps in his education." Arthur favoured her with his smile. Number 17, mildly condescending yet still chivalrous. He was aware that most of Boodles' regulars were part of her herd. A vitae of necessity could come from any peer of the realm, but she preferred men and women who'd actually done something to deserve the honour, instead of the latest minor celebrity to receive an OBE. "I would be delighted, dear lady. Shall I begin with the founding of Londinium?" His joviality masked his curiosity. He assumed she was laying a trap, though likely not a deadly one. But for him, or for her child? The knife next to her still hadn't figured out how to blink properly. "Oh no, Arthur," she exclaimed mischievously. "Much farther back than that. He wants to learn mythology." "Ah," Arthur replied. The first city it is, then. Did it go well? Fee asked, as she and her child sped through the London night in the back of her limousine. Ethan's face instantly settled into one of determination and intelligence, discarding his naive persona. A bit too well, I'm afraid. I pushed too hard towards the end, and he deduced that I wasn't really a neonate, but an older kindred, pumping him for information. Then he started ranting about the secret masters before storming out. It was my mistake, and does not reflect on the intelligence you provided about the good colonel. If we decide to recruit him, I can hopefully repair the damage later. On behalf of the Justicar, I thank you once again for providing cover for my interview. Is he dangerous, Archon? There was no fear in her voice, just curiosity. Only to himself. Strategos Langton, as you said, he collects secrets, apparently without regard to the risk they carry. He knows about the Bali, he knows about the Red Question. His theories about the origins of the clans are insightful. I suspect he even knows the truth about Hardstadt, and he does believe in the Deva. She snorted. And he is a wise man. The kind have a saying, Archon. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that no one is out to get you. They said nothing on the rest of the ride. There was nothing else to say.